Welcome everyone. Let's jump right into our explainer for Chapter 4. Today we're tackling one of the most critical, overarching issues of our time and honestly, of our future, water resources. We're going to break down exactly what the source material tells us about where we stand, how we use our water, and what we absolutely must do to protect it.
We've got a lot of fascinating ground to cover today. We'll be looking at India's water paradox, the sheer thirst of agriculture, our crisis of water quality, and then rounding it out with community conservation and how we can secure our water future. Let's get into it.
Part 1. India's water paradox. It's really about this grand illusion of global abundance clashing with our local reality. The chapter kicks things off with a pretty heavy question. Do you think what exists today will continue? Or will water scarcity pose our greatest challenge? With our population shifting and the environment degrading, scarcity isn't just a possibility, it's practically staring us in the face. We're looking at skyrocketing demand right at the exact time our supplies are shrinking from overuse and pollution.
And the numbers really put this into perspective. India gets about 4,000 cubic kilometers of water from rain and snow every year and has about 1,869 available from surface and groundwater. But here's the catch. Because of the terrain and how our hydrology actually works, we can only put about 60% of that to beneficial use. So that leaves the total utilizable water resource for the entire country at just 1,122 cubic kilometers. It's a lot less than you'd think.
When you look at the demographics, the imbalance is just staggering. Think about it. India takes up about 2.45% of the world's surface area, but it's home to over 17% of the global population. And the water to sustain all those people? Just 4% of the world's total. It is a massive structural challenge.
To make matters even more complicated, the geography of where that water actually falls is super uneven. The Ganga, Brahmaputra, and Barak river basins account for 60% of the total surface water, even though they only cover about a third of the country's landmass. So you've got these immense, concentrated resources in a few basins, while huge swaths of the rest of the country are completely stressed.
Moving on to Part 2, the thirst of agriculture. How a highly limited resource is heavily spent.
So you might be wondering, where exactly is all this scarce water going? Well, agriculture absolutely dominates. It swallows up a massive 89% of all surface water and an unbelievable 92% of our groundwater. Just compare that to the industrial sector, which takes a tiny 2% of surface water and 5% of groundwater, with domestic use making up the rest. Irrigation is literally drinking the lion's share.
And this intense reliance on irrigation, especially after the Green Revolution, has completely transformed certain states. In Punjab, for example, a mind-blowing 76.1% of the net irrigated area relies entirely on wells and tube wells. Haryana is right behind at 51.3%. They're growing super water-intensive crops, like wheat and rice, in places that honestly just wouldn't support them naturally without this massive, artificial supply of moisture.
But pumping out all that water does more than just empty the reserves. It's physically poisoning the water table. Overuse in places like Punjab, Haryana, and Tamil Nadu has caused severe depletion. Meanwhile, states like Rajasthan and Maharashtra are dealing with spiked fluoride levels in their groundwater. And in parts of West Bengal and Bihar, pulling up too much water has actually concentrated toxic arsenic in the supply. It's a really dangerous chain reaction.
Which brings us right to Part 3, a crisis of quality. What happens when water becomes literally unusable?
If you track the Ganges from its source, it reveals this really tragic contrast. Up in the less populated hilly stretches, the water quality is still relatively good. But the second it flows down into the plains and hits those highly populated, heavily irrigated areas, it just absorbs massive amounts of agricultural runoff, raw sewage, and industrial waste. By the time it reaches cities like Kanpur and Varanasi, the degradation is just heartbreaking.
And unfortunately, it's not just the Ganga. Data from the Central Pollution Control Board shows that organic and bacterial contamination is devastating rivers across the board. In fact, the chapter highlights that the Yamuna River between Delhi and Etawah is the most polluted river in the entire country. We're essentially turning these vital, life-giving waterways into toxic hazard zones.
But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. Let's pivot to Part 4, Community and Conservation, focusing on local triumphs and watershed management.
I want to share the incredible story of Ralegan City, a small village in Maharashtra. Back in 1975, this place was trapped in poverty in a pretty bad illicit liquor trade. But then, a retired Army personnel moved in and spearheaded a watershed development project. He actually got the villagers to volunteer their own labor to repair a leaking percolation tank.
They formed a youth group called Tarun Mandal, banned open grazing, outlawed the liquor trade, and, this is key, they banned water-guzzling crops like sugarcane, switching over to pulses and oilseeds instead.
The before and after of this place is just unbelievable. By doing the work themselves and building their own infrastructure, they barely had to rely on the government at all. Like the activist who started it said, they socialized the costs of development. Today, their wells are actually full during the summer, agriculture is booming, and they even built a school using nothing but village resources. It is living proof that grassroots watershed management can completely turn a community around.
A massive piece of that conservation puzzle is rainwater harvesting. It's a totally low-cost, eco-friendly way to save every single drop by guiding rain into bore wells, pits, or traditional structures. In Rajasthan, for instance, they use these covered underground tanks called kunds or tankas. Doing this doesn't just give you more water, it actively stops the water table from dropping and dilutes those nasty contaminants like fluoride and arsenic we talked about earlier. It's a total win-win.
Okay, let's wrap up with Part 5, Securing Our Water Future. This is where government initiatives meet personal action.
Looking at the big picture, the government has rolled out some major policies. You've got the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, or PMKSY, which has this massive goal of ensuring protective irrigation access for all farms. The slogan is Har Khath Ko Pani. They're also pushing hard for better tech to save water on farms. Basically, per drop, more crop. Plus, the 2012 National Water Policy is aggressively pushing to treat water as an economic good, which basically forces conservation once our basic drinking and sanitation needs are met.
The chapter also highlights the Jal Kranti Abhiyan, which is all about guaranteeing water security. They're doing this by turning one water-stressed village in each of the 672 districts into a model Jal Gram. They're setting up 1,000-hectare model command areas and blasting out awareness campaigns through social media, radio, and even school essay contests. It's a really holistic way to spark a genuine behavioral shift across the country.
But let's bring it a bit closer to home, because the text makes it super clear that there is a massive opportunity for recycling and reuse. It challenges us to reclaim lower-quality urban wastewater. I mean, think about it. We could use reclaimed water for cooling industrial machinery, or just use the runoff from washing our dishes or cars to water the garden. Right now, recycling is pretty limited, but if we scale it up, we can save our high-quality freshwater strictly for drinking.
I want to bring us back to a quote from that Raleigh city activist, because it really captures the exact spirit we need right now. He said, "The process of Raleighan's evolution to an ideal village will not stop. With changing times, people tend to evolve new ways." And that's exactly it. Human innovation, community teamwork, and our pure ability to adapt, those are the absolute best tools we have against scarcity.
So I'm going to leave you with a final thought directly inspired by an activity in the chapter. Take a look around your own home today. Based on the sheer amount of water you use, how are you going to evolve new ways to recycle and reuse it? What actual, actionable steps are you going to take to protect our most precious resource? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope it changes the way you look at the water flowing out of your tap.